Okay, it says this hangout on air is live.
All right.
Hello,
Awesome.
everybody. This is Tran from Circle of Gatekeepers, and I'm here with Isaac from Starseed Communications.
Hello.
Oh, okay. There's a echo. There you go. See, that was what I was talking about.
Oh, yeah. Always got to work out the technical kinks beforehand.
Yeah. Okay, so right. So now I actually have people joining on the chat and it's working. Good. All right.
Awesome.
So here we begin the interview. Isaac is an astrologer and channeler for Malakai. 6th density consciousness, 7th dimensional Pleiadian. He's an aspect of you.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay, so why don't we begin this interview by you telling us how you got into channeling?
Okay, yeah, sure. It actually started a few years ago, and it didn't start out with me, sitting down in a chair with my eyes closed, speaking to other people. It actually started out with a lot of what people might call automatic writing.
Oh, okay, right. That's how a lot of people start, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the easiest way to go about it at first. And it wasn't something that just started happening out of nowhere. I actually kind of pursued that kind of thing where I actually got really into some old 15th century grimoires and I approached it from the sorcery kind of angle rather than the whole starseed kind of thing at first, where it was kind of I got really into the pagan rituals and all that kind of stuff. And there are these books that had these symbols in them that are called sigils, and they're supposed to link your mind with the mind of the entity that you're trying to contact. And that's actually how I got started. It was actually kind of more in the darker realm of things because I didn't really know what I was getting into. And,
okay, stop right there. Why were you into the grimoire and symbol stuff?
I was just always, ever since I was a kid, I always felt just really drawn towards metaphysical kind of stuff. And the occult was just so fascinating to me, just this whole idea that you could actually control things in your reality with your mind. And that was always something that's fascinated me ever since I was little. And eventually, at some point, I was just, I kind of suppressed that desire to go after that kind of stuff for a long time because it's not something that's that real commonly acceptable. And eventually I just realized that I was going to go for it anyways because that's just what I wanted and I was interested in it and I was kind of tired of, suppressing that desire. And so I started getting into the stuff and just asking these particular beings about the mechanics of reality and just whatever wisdom they had to give. And that kind of was where I got started. And I started doing automatic writing where I have numbers of books full of just, Q&A sessions between me and various different entities.
Oh, so what kind of entities were you channeling during the automatic writing?
So before I say the word, don't freak out because technically they're considered demons. Because the word demon actually comes from, it's a Latin word, that diamond, which means helpful or knowledgeable spirit. And later on when the whole Christian mythos came about, that they changed that word to mean something completely different. If you think of a demon, you think of a hellfire beast that's just pure evil.
Absolutely.
Right. That's actually not where it came from.
Very negative.
Yeah. And some of those entities are very negative, and it's you have to be very careful to know which ones you're messing with to make sure that you don't start calling anything negative towards yourself. And so I kind of went through trial by fire. I didn't follow any of the protocols or any of the precautions that people told me to follow. And just jumped into it because I just felt I can communicate with these things, so whatever. And eventually I was kind of led to understand just through things that were happening in my life and the way I was starting to think that interacting with these beings, you kind of become a little more like them. And I noticed that I was becoming much more service to self oriented. I was becoming much more just kind of concerned with material things and material gains. And I don't know exactly what it was that made me change my mind, but I just kind of realized suddenly that these things were I felt like they were trying to direction rather than trying to help with self-empowerment. I've always been about the idea of self-empowerment rather than the idea of trying to do what somebody else says or trying to do anything that's going to help you control others or anything like that, because that's really the way you can draw the line between a positive or a negative entity, is that a positive entity is going to preach self-empowerment. And they always talk about oneness and how service to others is the same as service to self because they are an aspect of you. Every other person is an aspect of you. Whereas these other things kind of want to try to tell you try to make you feel special and kind of inflate your ego and try to make you go towards very materialistic kinds of goals. So yeah, I started out with all that and not really realizing what I was getting into, just knowing that I had a knack for communicating with other beings. And eventually decided to cut out all that stuff and just get rid of anything that even had anything to do with anything that was just about material gain or just selfishness or in any way. And eventually I came to this video by another Pleiadian channel on YouTube. Her name was Nora
Harold.
Something. I can't remember her last name. Was it Nora Harold?
I think so.
Okay, she's pretty popular, yeah. And there was a video where she kind of guides you through this meditation where you kind of ask the name of your higher self. And when I went through that, because my friend had just shown it to me, I didn't know what we were doing. He just put up this video one day, and it came up, and I was like, all right, let's go along with this. And when I asked the name, I immediately got the name Malakai and got an image of what he looked like and everything.
So what does he look like?
So I'd have to show you a picture. Do you know who the artist Android Jones is?
No.
Okay, he does a lot of very psychedelic paintings, and just he does a lot of very interesting, just intricate, kind of almost abstract stuff. And there was one of his particular where he showed this man, he looked like a shaman, only his clothes were kind of made out of light, and they just looked very almost technological in a way, but also somewhat Native American. It's kind of hard to describe. I'd have to actually show you a picture. But he just had these really interesting, just looked like a man that was wearing these clothes that were just made out of light, that were just flowing everywhere, and he just seemed like such a large and just epic appearance,
Wow, that's cool. So he definitely does have a body, or is that just how he appears to you?
That's how he appears to me. He would explain it that he's a sixth density being, so they don't really require bodies. They don't really require ships to go places. They are basically just, they can focus into any reality frame they want in any way that they want. They can just construct a body and just basically show up in front of you if they wanted to. And so I've heard other people have had weird dreams or other meditations where they'll be contacted by this entity called Malakai, but they'll get a very different interpretation of what he looks like. One person told me he looked like a bug alien. I was like something. I'm like, that doesn't quite match my... But I could understand that if an intelligence seems very alien to you or very foreign to you, you're going to interpret that energy in whatever way makes sense to you at that time. So if you interpret something as being very foreign to you, you might see it as an image of being an alien in your head.
Right. Yeah. So if you've only seen Sigourney Weaver movies, then you probably think that it does look like a bit of a bug.
Right. Yeah. It might seem a little strange to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So if there's sixth density consciousness, and he's actually an aspect of your higher self, how much kind of comprehension do you have of their world?
It's very difficult to describe. So the idea is that, that's what a starseed is when there's an intelligence or a being that has already gone through some of the different levels of consciousness, has already ascended through third, fourth, fifth density, and has decided to come back to reincarnate as a physical person in order to help with this whole transition that we're all going through right now, this very interesting time on our planet. And so...
it sounds like a mission.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is, really. He's very mission-oriented. It's I always kind of joke and say, if a starseed or a person on that level of consciousness wanted to kind of incarnate to just go have some fun, there are far better places to go than Earth. At this point, you can. So if you're here and you feel that you are one of these people, you probably are, and it's because you decided that you wanted to be of service to others and help them to awaken through this whole transition. So yeah, it's just kind of a mission-oriented sort of thing, and it sort of sounds almost like the Bodhisattva vow from Buddhism, where someone might become ascend through these different levels of consciousness, but decides to come back in order to help out rather than just go off and do whatever it is these higher density beings do.
Okay.
And he said that his experience of reality is very different than ours, that he can kind of choose how he wants to experience, and this idea of being a seventh dimensional. Basically, we have four dimensions, up, down, back, left, up, down, back, forward, left, right. You have three dimensions, and the fourth would be time. Whereas he's aware of other dimensions, to where it's almost impossible to even imagine what that actually means.
Yeah, I don't think our brains are designed for that. It's really just a mental, curiosity that we try to grasp what it is, because it's something so new and unfamiliar.
Yeah, right. And so he would have an experience of his own where it's sort of like a physical reality, where they still have a somewhat linear perception, although they can see. The image I get in my head is kind of hard to explain. I see him basically standing in a weird room that's made out of like all this technology, but it's not really technology. It's not machines. It's all made out of consciousness. They can think their environment into being the way they want it to be. And so they have like these weird like television screen type things that are completely 3D, where they can choose to view any particular time or situation that anybody else is going through. And they can watch it from their own perspective. And they can either influence something that's going on there, or they can focus themselves into that place. Like, it's like they can see what's going on in our reality through this weird like TV screen type technology that's really just made of consciousness, if that makes sense. And that's kind of a strange idea.
Yeah, it sounds like they live in the matrix, but it's a matrix of consciousness and light.
Yeah, that idea of the matrix does seem to recur throughout this idea of there being a simulated reality where there's like actually consciousness that is running the whole thing.
So how much how much interaction does he have with you on a daily basis? Like, is he always in the back of your mind, or does he only interact with you? Okay.
It started out as
how was that for you?
Well, at first it was kind of like I had to sit down and really try to focus on bringing him through. Like, he was kind of more like a thing that I had to decide. I wanted to initiate this thing. He wouldn't just show up and be like, hey, do this. Like, I had to initiate that and make that choice. And as I continued to do this more and more, I find that the connection, the idea of separation between us begins to kind of vanish. And over time, we just kind of start to mesh together to where I don't have to sit there and really channel him specifically anymore to really contact him. I can just kind of there to have communication with that part of my higher self, and it just kind of happens. So sometimes I'll just be in conversation, and all of a sudden he just starts speaking, and it's both of us, it's at the same time. It's kind of becoming more and more integrated the more that I call that energy to myself.
So he's there right now. I mean, he's here.
Exactly, yeah. And sometimes, I'll kind of step out and start saying things. Yeah, I'll start saying things that I'm not even really paying attention to, and I'll be like, well, why did I just say that? And that'll be kind of him putting his coming out more than, my ego self.
Wow, that's really amazing. Gosh, I can't even imagine what that would be like. Does it ever seem intrusive?
Intrusive? No, not at all. It's always been a very, like, I have to initiate the whole thing. Like, something that they talk about in the Law of One, and that Malakai has talked to me about, is that beings of that more positive orientation, they respect the law of free will more than anything else. And so they're not going to force themselves into your reality. They're not going to throw themselves in front. They're not just going to appear in front of you and be like, hey, guess what? We exist. Because that would take away your choice to believe whether these things exist or not. So it's all about your own free will, and whether you choose to interact in this way, or if you choose to believe that any of this is real or not. They're not going to force it, and they really stick by that.
Okay, that's
so that's
really
cool.
Cool.
One way you can kind of test to see if something is benevolent or if it's not is if they're trying to force anything on you, or trying to be intrusive in any way, or get you to do anything you may not want to. That would be a good way to know what's what.
Okay. So now that you're calling more and more of him into your own experience, it may be something that you're kind of losing track of now that it's become so familiar. But how does it feel to actually, like, emotionally, how does it feel to channel him and to have him around?
It feels kind of awesome, honestly. Like, I feel like I just become much more like clear-headed, and just like, it's like a sense of just like power, but not in the sense of being like power over something, but of just like feeling very empowered. Like, just that idea of like being really centered in the view of being like a creative being, that you create your own reality, becomes much more like just prevalent in that kind of state. You just really feel like a very powerful being in that way. And it's really a pleasant experience, honestly. And I remember at first when I started doing this, if you watch my earliest videos, like, I'll come out of the channel state and I'll be like, it's like waking up from a nap, I'm kind of disoriented.
Yes.
And the more I do it, in the more recent ones, it's just kind of like, there's less of a jump in vibration, I guess you could say, to where it's not that big of a deal anymore. It feels actually kind of normal. And the more we do it, it's just, it becomes like this thing where it's like, you almost can't tell the difference between the two after a while. Because, I mean, we are the same being. And the more I interact with him, the more like him I become. And so, I just kind of start talking, and that's like channeling for me now. I just kind of almost lose track of what I'm saying, but it happens to be coherent. And then I'll be like, what did I just say? Oh, well, I guess I'm glad it made sense, because I don't remember what I just said.
So how much, like maybe in percentage wise, how much do you retain of, or how much are you present during the channeling, when he's kind of the front seat and you're in the back?
I'd say at first it's probably about like 50% or so. I'd kind of drift in and out. And now it really depends on the situation. It kind of changes sometimes. Lately, whenever I actually sit down and really just do, like, I meditate myself into that state where he's mainly speaking, I don't remember a whole lot of it. I am present through it to where I could pull myself out if I wanted to. But I try not to. The more I try to retain the information, the more I get in the way. And then it starts to be this when I start tripping on my words and I start stuttering and like maybe twitch a little bit.
Speaking of which,
go ahead.
Speaking of which, I have to bring up an observation, which is I find really, really amusing. I've never watched any other channelers where the being will like kind of commentate on your channeling ability.
Yeah. Yeah, he's told me many times that I need to expand my vocabulary.
Yeah, like I'll just read out 3 choice phrases that I remember from.
Okay.
Okay. The channeler does not have any better vocab to express this any more clearly.
Exactly, yeah. It's like the more words I have available in my database, the more words he can use to get it out. They can only use what you already have. So, yeah, I thought that was kind of funny too. Like, all right, I guess I should probably start reading more often.
Yeah, get a thesaurus.
Right.
The channeler is still getting used to our frequency. Have patience with him.
Get with the program, son.
Yeah. And another one. The channeler still tries to control the flow.
Exactly, yeah. He's like, if this guy would just get out of the way and let us talk, it's come through a lot easier, is what he's saying.
I've never seen such a level of transparency. You're doing your own quality control.
Sometimes I don't even actually watch the videos before I put them up. I'll just do the channeling, and then I'm like, good enough. Like that's.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I thought that was funny. But what other amusing or interesting perspectives does he hold about the material that comes through, or any of the sessions or questions that get asked of him?
Well, as far as the questions go, there's been a number of times where somebody will ask something and he just basically will flat out say that's irrelevant. And those are usually the questions that have to do with things that don't actually have anything to do with you or your actual growth as a human being. Like I remember one person tried to ask something about how they could open up a wormhole if they were to come across a wormhole. And he's basically like, well, do you have a spaceship? I'm like, well, no, it doesn't matter. So he just tries to keep things very practical, to where it's like if you ask things that, or if you're asking questions about somebody else's life, he'll be like, that's not really pertinent to what we're talking about here. Do you have any other questions? So I thought that was kind of interesting.
That's amazing. Okay. Yeah, because sometimes because I follow several different channelers, and there are some channelers where some amazing being will come in, and the questions that are asked of them are very personal ones. And I sometimes think to myself, it's kind of a wasted opportunity. You have like a 7th dimensional being here, and you're going to ask about Aunt Judy,
Right,
like,
yeah.
That's really weird.
Or sometimes people will ask stuff about. Sometimes people will ask stuff about like conspiracy theory style kind of stuff, where they're asking like, well, what are the Greys doing right now? Or what is our government doing right now? And it's like, that's not really the point of what we're doing. We're trying to he's really more concerned about trying to focus on the spiritual aspect of things and helping to awaken people so that we can do what we need to get our control back from the people that people might be asking these questions about, like the government and stuff, from that control structure. So where he doesn't like to talk about fear-based kinds of ideas. He wants to talk about how you can get out from under that.
All right. So he's really trying to lead us through the path of empowerment and work with people on a personal level, rather than
it's all about self-empowerment.
Yeah, the mind. Okay.
Exactly.
Cool. All right. So I had a question here that I wrote from before. What really motivates you to do astrology?
Honestly, it's extremely exciting to me. It's just I try to follow that whole message that Malakai puts through of like following what you were most excited about in each moment. And very often, if I ask myself what's the most exciting thing I could do in this moment, it's usually look at some astrology charts and learn more about astrology.
So what is the significance of astrology for you?
Well, I mean, it seems to just, above everything else, besides even just being something that can help guide you through your day sometimes and help you be prepared for certain things, doing astrology, to me, seeing how accurate it can be is kind of an indicator. Like, it points towards the idea that there really is an intelligence behind everything that's going on in our lives, that is not necessarily our conscious, ego selves. Like, there is a higher intelligence that is guiding you through certain things, and and what's interesting is how you can, like, I could look at a chart and read it my way. Another astrologer could read the same chart and read it their way. And both perspectives will still be accurate for different groups of people that happen to resonate with that and be drawn to that particular person. And it's just, it just shows you like how there's just this really grand, like beautiful orchestration of consciousness going on behind the scenes that is just so massive and complex and just beautifully put together. Where I'll look at my chart compared to a good friend's chart, and you'll see that there's correspondences there where things will match up that show, of course, you're friends, and it's like that maybe you kind of see you might have known this person from a past life or whatnot, and you just see all these chains and connections everywhere, where it's just like, wow, like it really just shows how amazingly orchestrated consciousness really is, and just, I don't know, it's a beautiful perspective to me.
Okay, well, I'm speaking from somebody that is not too familiar with astrology. When I listen to your astrology videos, it kind of sounds like you're speaking a different language. So what kind of advice do you have for people who are kind of new to this and they have no way of knowing what hour they were born in? The time of day they have no idea. The day itself, probably accurate.
Right, yeah. You can do things, if you don't know the exact date or the exact time of your birth, it does kind of take away a certain amount of detail from somebody reading your birth chart. But I mean, I'd say if you are a complete beginner to this and you want to learn a little more about it, honestly, the internet is a great resource for finding. That's kind of how I taught myself, was just doing hours and hours and hours of like detective work, just trying to research all these different perspectives on astrology. And it's not something you can, I mean, I guess there are some schools or like, groups that will kind of present it in a classroom type environment. For the most part, you kind of have to teach it to yourself through the resources that are available. And it's not really anything you can just pick up and just automatically know exactly what any of this means. Like, there is an amount of study involved, for sure. But as far as like the horoscopes and stuff go, I do talk a lot about, like, I know it sounds like I'm talking a different language when I'm talking about the conjunctions and the aspects of this planet. But that's why I try to explain like what that actually means and how that is actually relevant at the same time. Because some people are into that more technical aspect, and some people just want to hear the whole, like, what do I do with this? Like, I don't want to know what Neptune is doing to the sun. I just want to know how this affects me. So I try to cover both fields as much as I can.
Yeah, it sounds like a good approach because from my view, if people understood what Neptune was doing in conjunction to whatever, it sounds like they wouldn't even need an update from you. They should already know, right?
Right, yeah, which I've noticed a lot of astrologers don't really go around and watch all the other astrologer stuff because they're doing it themselves and they have their own perspective on it. And it's like, it can be helpful to watch other people as well. But for the most part, yeah, it seems like if you already know what these things are doing, that probably means that you're already interested in it enough to where you're just reading your own charts.
So what's the most shocking thing that you've discovered using astrology?
Most shocking thing? I don't know. I guess let me think about that for a second. What would be
surprising, delightful?
I think one of the most shocking things is kind of like something I touched on a little bit ago, is where you can see connections between different people, and where you can see like maybe two best friends, and they've just always kind of resonated together for whatever reason. And then you look at their charts, and there's just all these little things that line up and match up to where it's like, of course they're friends. Like, it'd be impossible to imagine them being together and not being friends, And sometimes when you look at families and stuff too, you can almost see just these different chains. I noticed like just these links between different people that can be traced so far back that it's just, I don't know, it's hard to explain. It's just, I guess I would say just the idea of how well orchestrated everything is. Like, there's just, the massive level of intelligence behind the things that we take for granted as just being automatic or normal. The things that seem to just happen are actually like, there's a science there that can explain to you that there's actually like all these different correspondences to how these things come about. And it's just so complex. I don't know, for some reason I really like those kinds of complex things, I guess.
Okay. So,
you know, shocking though, you know.
Well, we can come back to that if you know, sometimes it'll pop up later in your mind. So, you know, everyone is saying now that time is speeding up, and especially for starseeds and people into spirituality, everything is accelerating at a really amazing pace, and everyone is, you know, on the fast track. So, would you say that in astrology you're seeing something which is showing that effect as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has more to do with the idea of consciousness awakening to more possibilities all at once. And you can kind of see that through what's been going on lately when I've been talking about, you know, these different chains of, I say that word chains a lot, but these conjunctions of the planets being next to each other and just these patterns of really pointing towards this idea of just awakening faster and faster and just opening up to more and more information at once. And I guess for some reason I feel like being more aware of more information at one time makes the passage of time seem faster, because you're just more engaged. Your mind is just full of new stuff. And, you know, they say time flies when you're having fun. So it kind of applies to that same idea, I think, where it may not be like fun in the way that you normally think about it, but it is, there's just more novelty, I guess, as Terence McKenna would call it, just more complexity happening all at once. And that makes the passage of time just seem a lot faster, I think.
Okay. So as a channeler and as an astrologer, who would you say are the biggest influences on your life?
Oh man, well, one would definitely be Bashar Daralanka. He's really big on YouTube. He's been a channel for the past like 33 years. And that's really what got me into a lot of this stuff, is I was already into kind of the metaphysical realm stuff. When I found Bashar was when I was just like, what is this guy doing? Does he really think he's channeling an alien or something? I'm like, you know, I was completely skeptical about it, but then I'd listened to it.
Really? You were a skeptic? You started as a skeptic?
Oh, totally, yeah. Yeah, like, I mean, I wasn't a complete skeptic because I was still open to the idea, but like, I avoided the whole alien, the ET thing for a long time because it just seemed too fantastical and too just out there for me to really grasp, which is kind of silly considering that I was dealing with, you know, like ancient grimoires and angels and demons and magic and stuff like that. But maybe that was just my own denial, I guess, of what it was that I should have been doing at the time. But yeah, I was really skeptical about like him, especially at first, because he was the first time I ever saw anybody doing something like that. But then I listened to the information he would bring forward, and I'm just like, wow, this actually lines up with exactly how I've always felt about things. And he's been a huge inspiration. There's another YouTube channel called Mind and Magic. It's one word, Mind and Magic with a K. This guy, Frater Xavier, he doesn't show his face. He doesn't tell anybody his real name. He just has hundreds of videos that explain things like the idea of like what, you know, quote unquote magic might be, and just the way that reality works in our place as conscious beings creating our reality and stuff. I've learned a lot from his channel, and I'd say those two are probably two of the biggest inspirations for me.
Okay. So in a couple of your videos, you've mentioned Malakai's motivations for doing this, co-creating this with you. There's another being that you channeled in your first video named Ra, and this is kind of talking about the law of one stuff. And he also went through his motivations for doing some of this, basically saying that some of the problems that we're facing are kind of because of him, or because of the information that came from him.
Yeah, the way you explain that, which I haven't had a whole lot of interactions with Ra since then. For some reason, I felt him coming through very strongly then, and now I feel like I'm just supposed to kind of do this whole Law of One series I've been talking about, because the information's already there. But as far as that goes, yeah, the idea is that, you know, these beings that the Egyptians came to think of as gods because they were just of such a higher level of consciousness, and they could just do things that seemed to be magic to them. Ra was one of them, or rather they're a collective of a consciousness, and they can separate themselves into, you know, whatever aspects they need to make sense. But the idea is that they came and they gave us all this knowledge. They built the pyramids. They taught us about things like astrology. They taught us about like an elemental and planetary magic and all this stuff and all the ritual stuff that you see. people talk about sometimes. And while it was meant to, in the beginning, it was meant to be used to help everyone to ascend, basically, to reach a higher level of their own consciousness and heal whatever wounds they have, both physically and mentally and spiritually. And eventually, our third density egotistical point of view took over, and some people like the royals decided to use this information and this technology for themselves to elevate themselves above everybody else so that they can control everybody. And so in that way, like, it is, in a sense, partly due to their interaction with us that the control structures that exist now are able to do what they do, because they're using that information that they gave us in a negative way. So it's not like they came here and they were like specifically like, here, have this so you can control some people. It's like that we twisted it around to use it in a negative way. But, I also find it hard to believe that a sixth density being that is beyond time wouldn't have known that they were going to do that. They were going to twist that information around to use it for control. So part of me thinks there's like an overarching goal, I guess, here, where like they knew we had to go through some struggle through some dark times in order to actually come to the understanding that we're coming to now. At least that's my opinion of the whole thing. It's kind of strange.
Yeah, I find it amazing that it has such far-reaching consequences so many years later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just sharing some knowledge, changes things for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And they kind of talk about that a bit in the Law of One, about how sharing knowledge and teaching is one of the most important things you can ever do, because in teaching someone else, because that other person is part of the same being, we are all one. If you teach someone else, you're teaching yourself. And if you learn, you're still, it's a learning and teaching kind of back and forward kind of thing. And they say that's one of the most admirable things that any person can do is learn and teach and learn. Okay.
All right, cool. So one of the questions that I always ask all the people that I interview is about portals and vortexes. Now, after you told me the thing about the wormholes, I'm kind of a little reluctant to ask this, but I'm just going to go ahead anyway. As somebody who is sensitive to energies, have you had many experiences or any experiences of like portals of knowledge or gates to other dimensions in your space, or as you were walking around, like say in a forest or a park or something like that?
Yeah, sort of. I haven't had anything specific where I was like, that was like hugely shocking, but I've definitely noticed that there are certain areas that just feel completely different than others, and they will have like a certain like pattern to that energy that you can feel, to where certain things might play out in certain patterns in that area. Like Sedona is somewhere I really want to go visit, because even just looking at pictures of it and hearing other people talk about it, I feel like I can just tap into that vortex they say is there, which is supposed to be just a huge amount of energy, a really high vibrational place. And
just so talking about it, you're tapping into it. That's amazing. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, I wouldn't say that I've ever just wandered into a place and just been like, oh, there's definitely a portal here, but I do definitely pick up on different levels of vibration in certain areas. And you can kind of tell like what patterns are associated with that level of vibration, if that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. So how does being able to channel and doing this astrology bleed over into other abilities that you may have?
Other abilities. Well, it kind of all ties into one thing, because it comes down to the fact that everything is based on intention and belief. And so anything that you fully believe you can do and have the intent to do, you can actually do usually. But it's that level of subconscious belief that really is what gets people. So people might think, if it's your belief and your intention, so like technically I should be able to fly. Like I should be able to fly around and levitate or whatever. It's like, well, you may try to believe that consciously, but subconsciously there's a whole lot of things going on that you're not aware of that prevent you from actually having that belief.
Yeah, there's like decades of experience of not flying, right?
Right, yeah, exactly. So it's not quite as simple as just consciously believing something. It has to do with those subconscious beliefs that we have on a collective level, to where if somebody were to do that and then someone else were to see you doing it that was not able to believe in those sorts of things, you would be violating that law of free will, because they would no longer have the option to believe these things are possible or not. They would just see you flying and be like, paradigm shattered. And that is not helpful for somebody. They have to get to that point on their own. And so it all kind of blends in together. It's like it's all about just your intention to do a thing and your belief that it can actually be done. And sometimes we have a belief that you have to, that works like a muscle, you know, that you have to do this one thing over and over and over again to get better at it, which is also still a belief. But I don't know, I think you know what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, okay. All right. So what about your dream state?
It's weird. It's really, really weird. I gotta say, especially lately, for the past like month or so, my dreams have been off the wall. Oh man, I've had one of the more memorable ones I had just recently was I found myself on a naval ship in the middle of the ocean that was just floating there, and there was another guy there that he seemed familiar. I think I met him once in real life, but I don't know who he actually was. He's like this big, like 6'8" guy that just I didn't really know. And we were both on this ship investigating what was going on because it was sitting in the middle of the ocean, but nobody was there. The entire crew had vanished. And we were there investigating, trying to figure out what had happened there. And when we were done with our mission, I remember that I could focus my mind in a certain way to where this portal would open up above me. And if I were to try to move forward in that portal, I'd move forwards in time. If I moved backwards in it, I'd move backwards in time. So it was like a weird like time travel kind of dream where we were like on a mission to do this thing. And then, yeah, so that's just one example.
Oh my God.
A lot of times they're so abstract. Sometimes they get so detailed in abstract ways that it's really hard to describe.
So they're lucid dreams?
Sometimes. And sometimes the more disturbing ones that I've had are where I will be in a place where I'll have my memories. I'll know my name is Isaac. I'll know where I live. I know that this is what I do for a living. But all of a sudden, I'll run into people that are just like the environment's just completely different than the waking world, even though I feel exactly the same as I do right now talking to you. And I'll be walking around in this world just like, where am I? Am I dreaming? Is this real? I don't know what's happening. And then I'll run into other people in that world who know who I am, but I don't have any memories of them. And they like will get upset with me because they think I'm pretending to not know them. So it's like I pop over to like an alternate me with these memories, and these people are just like, what's wrong with you? Like, are you trying to play a game right now? Like, are you okay? Like, and I'm just like, where am I? Am I dreaming? Like, they think I'm completely insane.
That's amazing. Your dreams sound like you're jumping timelines and shifting parallel worlds or something.
Right. I wish I had a little more control over it because it's really disorienting. It's very strange. I've had a few like that where I was just like, where am I? Like, I feel completely lucid. In a lucid dream, you're aware that you're dreaming. You can kind of control things. You can you can make yourself fly in those kinds of environments. And this is a little different to where I was lucid. I was just as lucid as I am now talking to you. But I didn't know that I was in a dream. I just felt like I was in a whole nother world and I wasn't sure how to get back. And so there's a little bit of anxiety that comes along with those where I'm like, am I just stuck here in this parallel world? Like, and then eventually I'll just wake up. I'm like, whoa, that was a crazy one. And, yeah, a dream state is really strange.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like we could do a whole interview just on that. But anyway, pressing on. Okay. So I wanted to know that we're coming up to the end of the year. Speaking of lucid dreams, what are your intentions for next year with your business?
Really to help just try to expand on this whole thing that I'm doing now as much as I can, and really just try to get the word out to as many people, maybe improve the quality of the videos, and really in any way that I can try to spread the types of messages that Malakai has gotten through. I just hope to spread those as much as possible just to get it out, because the more people we get on the same page, the more closer we get to actually functioning as a collective. And when we get to that point, that's when we can actually start interacting with other beings that are already interacting with our world, but in a more open way. Because basically we all have to get along first before we can get along with them too,
Yeah. It all starts with number one, right?
Yeah, it's part of the message too. It's all about if you really want to change things, you have to change yourself. And through doing that, you automatically change your environment, because you and your environment are the same. Like, there is no separation. It's totally an illusion. So
okay.
Just want to get that out as big as possible. And the 2017 really, from what I've looked at as far as the astrology goes, it's like 2016 had a lot to do with tearing down your old identity and rebuilding up a new sense of identity, who you really, aligning with who you feel you really are. And then 2017 is going to be going through and building a life around yourself that is based on that foundation, that new identity. And it's going to be the main theme for a lot of people, I think.
Wow. So it's a year of intentional co-creation.
Yeah, you could definitely say that. It was like 2016 was definitely a year of transformation and reinventing the identity. And 2017 is where you get to apply that new identity.
Okay. All right. So what I'd like to propose now is for the viewers who have tuned into this live broadcast, and also the viewers who will watch later on, do you think it would be possible to bring Malakai in just for a brief channeling? And if there are any questions from the audience, they can type it into the chat. And if Malakai's okay with it, and if there are any questions that people have, then I'll read them to him.
Yeah, that should be fine. Just like I said before, try to keep it the questions to be things that are actually relevant to your own spiritual progression, and like things that you can apply in your life that have really to do with your own life, and not anything too out there, I guess you could say.
No questions about Area 51 and wormholes. Got it.
Right, yeah, because he's probably not going to answer that.
Okay, all right. Well, he'll definitely give us commentary on, the questions we have and the quality of your channeling. So.
Right, yeah, it's very straightforward.
Okay, I'll definitely try not to take it personally.
Okay. All right, yeah. So I guess.
How long does it take you to get into the channeling state? Like just like.
Anymore, only in a few seconds. I just need to sit there and clear my mind and do some deep breathing and just put out the intention to bring him through, and then I get like a sense of like a tingle usually that starts in the back of my neck and goes through my body, and once I get that, that's when he's here, and that's when I'm ready. So.
Okay. All right. So, whenever you're ready.
All right. Sure. Just give me 1 second. We greet you with love and light, and as our service to the one infinite creator, we wish to answer whatever questions or maintain whatever dialogues you may wish at this time.
Hello, Malakai.
Feel free to ask your questions. Hello.
Okay, thank you for joining us today. It's a pleasure to speak to you.
We thank you for having us with you during this co-creation.
Did you have any general messages for the audience today and for the viewers who will watch later on YouTube?
Only that all is one, all beings are but one being, and you are merely a fractalization and individuation of this one. And to treat others with this perception, to be of service to others, is indeed the best way to be of service to yourself.
Some people have trouble putting this into practice. I know for myself that when I want to basically do service to others, sometimes it feels like it would be a contradiction, that it feels like it would be a disadvantage to myself. What advice do you have for me to understand that?
To be of service to others, you must first be in a state to where you may be of service to others. You can only share happiness or wisdom to others that you already have. Therefore, you must first take care of your own emotional needs. By putting yourself in a position where you are, in a sense, being a martyr, this does not actually assist anyone. Truly, the best way to assist others is to follow your highest excitement in every moment, to do that which resonates most heavily with you, most strongly with you, we should say. By doing this, you allow yourself to get into your vibration, we would term your true vibration, the vibration of your true self. By doing this, you simply attract to you all the things that are relevant to your happiness. And when you are in this state, you no longer need to try or to force your reality to be in a certain way. And you are then able to be of service to others. You must first be in a good state yourself to be service to others.
Okay, thank you. So there are a couple of questions from the audience, the current audience. There's a question from Casey. What is the name of my higher self?
This is something you must ask yourself. as it is your higher self, and it is only relevant for you to know of this in your own way. Therefore, if I were to simply tell you the name, you would not have to have the experience of finding it yourself and having to trust within yourself to understand it and continue the work that will be required of you once you make this connection. You must learn to trust yourself completely in this, and if we were to proverbially spill the beans, this would not be of any help to you.
Thank you. Next question is Aloha 29. What can I do to tune into what my life or soul purpose is?
By simply asking yourself, what is the most exciting thing that you may take action on in any given moment that is available to you in that moment? The feeling of excitement is your vibrational indication that you are getting closer to that which your true purpose or your true self has set out for you. One of the greatest gifts the Creator has given us is the truth that you must only pursue what you love. You must only pursue your passion and your joy. And by doing this, all other things will fall into place for you.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Teresa Kennison. How do I know I'm growing?
By understanding, you may approach this by asking yourself whether you are listening more and more to yourself, or if you are listening more and more to what others say that you should be doing, or what others say you should believe. Growth in this sense truly is learning to trust yourself completely and learning to understand your own intuition and taking responsibility as the creator that you are. The more you are able to take this responsibility, the more control you have over your own state of being and your own vibration is a good indication that you are indeed growing.
Thank you. Next question is from Atman. How does your sleeping cycle affect your spiritual evolution?
Each person's sleeping cycle is different. Everyone has different needs at different times in their life. Therefore, there is no set rule for this. However, sleep is necessary in that it gives a chance for your subconscious to process certain things. As when your conscious mind is active, your subconscious mind is less capable of processing the information that the conscious mind is taking in or digesting. The sleep schedule itself has to do with the circadian rhythms of the particular person. And there is no set rule for any of this. It is merely, once again, you must learn to trust your own inner voice and follow what feels right for your body.
Thank you. Next question is from Martha. Could you comment on the overlap between what we call psychotic experiences and awakening to other realities?
These are very broad terms. The example we might use is that a person who has been diagnosed with schizophrenia and is somebody very often who is indeed tapping into other realities, but does not have the option to turn them off or control this ability. Where what they are seeing is very often truly, it is real in a sense. They are actually tapping into other realities. However, when you do not have the ability to turn this off or consciously control it, it becomes unmanageable for the waking mind and therefore becomes termed psychosis. Does this explain the question?
I think so, but if the person would like further clarification, they can type later on. Let's move on. This is a question from Michelle M. How do you know if you are a starseed? She explains further. I watched a video about it and found that I was very emotional watching it with tingles all through my body.
That feeling is something you would call resonance. You're tapping into that which is true of your own personal reality. You are getting closer to your true self. Very often, if you are drawn to these types of concepts whatsoever in this particular time on your planet, there's a very strong chance that you are one of these people. If you feel within yourself, if you experience a resonance or an experience of expansion in your consciousness, when you hear these types of terms, there's a very good indication that you are indeed one of these people. But again, the whole idea is that you must learn to trust yourself on this matter. You will not get a sense of solid external validation on this. You must learn to trust within your own intuition to know this.
Okay. The next question is from Christina LaSalle. Are my dreams as of lately an indication of my evolution?
Dreams very often are an indication, or at least a way of viewing certain aspects of your evolution. Through these symbolic experiences, you are able to process certain things in a way that you would not normally be able to do in the waking life, as there are less limitations in the dream realms. Becoming more aware of your dreams and becoming more interested in trying to decipher the meaning of them is, in a sense, an indication that you are growing, as you're becoming more curious about yourself. And the more you learn about yourself, the more expanded you become.
Okay, thank you. A question from Raising the Stakes. How do I protect my energetic boundaries when dealing with people who are upset due to the US election? And how do I aid them in understanding the great possibilities now available to us because of it?
If you have a belief that you must shield yourself, then one particular permission slip, as they may call it, to do so, that is quite powerful on your planet and within your collective, is the idea of a stone called black tourmaline. This particular stone has protective properties that will help to shield you from other energies which you may term negative, or ones that you do not wish to interact with. This is one way. Another is simply by envisioning a bubble of white light around you that separates your energy from the others, in the sense that you are not taking on any of the qualities you do not wish to take on. As far as trying to show others how to act in this way, how to act in the way that you feel that they should, you cannot do this by trying to explain or trying to force this perspective on anyone. You can only do this through leading by example. By embodying the example that you wish to be seen in the world, you will be, in a sense, acting as a guiding light for those who are ready to do so. However, everyone's evolution is a personal and subjective thing. You cannot force this on anyone. They must choose to do so on their own, such as the law of free will.
Okay, so the second part was, how do I aid them in understanding the great possibilities now available to us because of it? Was that answered?
Yes, this is the idea of leading by example. You cannot really show or aid anyone in understanding anything that they are not willing to understand on their own. By embodying these types of qualities and embodying this perspective that shows all these different possibilities, you are acting as a guiding light to these other entities.
Okay, I see. Next question. Megatron Man asks, hi, please can you ask Malakai if what is a good way to develop third eye?
In a sense, the awareness of the third eye is something that does happen on its own. It is the lower base chakras that require more conscious effort. Once the root, sacral, and solar plexus chakras are firing in a healthy way, the rest of the process happens on its own. The heart, throat, third eye, and crown will begin to open on their own. Base 3 chakras are, in a sense, the pump that gets the energy up to the third eye. There's little you can do to consciously force this awakening, as if you did, this would cause a bit of psychic shock, as you would be opening yourself to things you are not ready to understand. Therefore, by working upon the base 3 chakras, the root, the sacral, and solar plexus, through meditation, which many of these types of meditations are available to you on your planet at this time, by getting these in alignment, you will begin a process that will allow for the other chakras to open as they need to. There is an overemphasis on the idea of the third eye, as it is fascinating to perceive of the types of things that the third eye can show you. However, if you are not in a place where you're able to process these experiences, they can be more detrimental than they are helpful.
That's really fascinating. So your main piece of advice to clear out and open the first 3 chakras is to simply listen to the available meditations that will cleanse and heal these first three chakras.
Yes, there's a basic methodology to this, is to focus upon that center in your body, imagining the color that corresponds with it, and as you breathe in, you breathe light and clean energy into the center, and as you breathe out, you are expelling whatever negativity or darker or heavier energies that may be contained within. But you will have to intuit this for yourself, feeling what we are referring to.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. The next question is from Andres Aviles. Oh, why is my hair thinning? I know that I create my own reality, so what is the purpose of this? How do I change it?
If you're experiencing this, there must be, on some level, you have subconsciously decided that it is relevant for you to do this. We cannot explain to you the exact meaning of this particular symbol in your reality, but just that to know that if it is happening, it is because it is relevant to you in some way. You may wish to investigate and ask your own higher self as to what this symbol may mean, or perhaps you may have an intuition as to what this may have to do with already, and you simply just need to listen to that. There are certain things that happen within our reality that you are unable to just consciously change, and very often these are meant to lead you towards seeking in different directions and seeking to understand things on your own. But if you are experiencing this, it is because you and your higher self have agreed to allow this to happen. It's in a sense you on a higher level that is showing you this experience, and to embrace it and try to learn from it and to try to see where this is guiding you is the main purpose. Whereas if you try to escape from this reality and escape from this experience, you are in a sense resisting yourself.
Thank you very much. Okay, another question from Atman. 6 years ago, I saw a green round-shaped ship in the sky as I was getting home. It's like it waited for me there. What could have been the reason for their appearance near my home?
Very often, when one begins to open up to these types of ideas we are expressing here, they will begin to make contact with other beings from other realms, which are highly telepathic. They know when you're going to see these things. If you see these things, it is because you were meant to, and they were meaning for you to see them. There is a process of integration in which one must be fed certain experiences over a period of time in order to slowly and easily bring in the idea of contact, to where if you were to actually have physical contact with one of these beings, you would not, as you say, freak out. They know exactly what it is that you need to experience in order for you to get to this level, to where you can have create these contacts without losing your grounding, without experiencing what you may call psychic shock.
Wow. Atman, it sounds like you're in for an exciting future. Next question from Aloha Ola 29. Is it better to meditate without any aids, for example, music, guided meditations, etc.?
The idea of one thing being better than the other is purely subjective. However, you will find that meditating without these aids is, in a sense, will get you more able, it will increase your skills to being able to do these things at any time. However, if you feel you do need these aids, there's nothing wrong with using them. Just understand that they are, in a sense, training wheels. They are a tool that is to be transcended once you no longer need it. The tools are not a problem. It is only a problem when you become dependent upon them and can no longer meditate without them. Meditating without aids gets you reassures you of the ability that you can do this at any time, anywhere.
Okay, so those are all the questions that come from the live stream. Thank you very much for coming through, Malakai.
It has been our pleasure to co-create this experience with you. We thank you for your questions. With love and light of the Infinite Creator, we bid you farewell.
Farewell. Until next time.
Hi.
Hello again. So I'll give you a few moments to come back to reality.
Sure, thanks.
This reality anyway.
Grab some water.
So that was awesome.
Good, I'm glad.
Okay, so why don't we finish up by you letting everybody know how they can get in contact with you.
Yeah, definitely. You can always contact me through my email. It's in the description of a lot of my videos, or you can go to www.starseed-communications.com, where you can schedule a private session with Malakai, or you can schedule a private session with just me and do your astrology readings, where we look into your birth chart. And I also look at the other transits that are going on now, as well as through the next year, to give you a general idea of what you might be going through the next year. I also do email readings as well, in case you don't want to do the video thing, where you can email me 2 to 3 questions and I'll respond to you via email. If you want to support me in any other way, I have a Patreon account, which is like a crowdfunding kind of thing, where you can go to make donations. So yeah, those will be the main ways.
Awesome. Well, I've had a lot of fun this interview, and I hope it's been enriching for the viewers and for the viewers later on YouTube. So thank you very much for this co-creation. I hope to possibly speak to you sometime in the future when, well, let's see how our resolutions come about. But I think it's going to be a great year.
I think so too, definitely. Well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's been fun.
Yes. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.